What's up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee, and what a great day it is today. It's a Wealth Wednesday with my girl, Stacey Tisdale.
Happy Wealth Wednesdays, everybody, and we are so excited. This is crazy, but we're celebrating Black History Month here at Wealth Wednesdays, as we do every Wednesday and every day, but we decided to really turn it up a notch today. We have with us the president and CEO of the National Urban League. Former, were you the youngest mayor ever?
Yep.
Youngest mayor ever, New Orleans, Mr. Marc Morial.
I'm still young.
Yes, indeed.
And in the other corner, we have Dr. Rachel Laryea, who is the author of Black Capitalist and a scholar, and I can't even tell you enough about Rachel and all of the great things that she's done and is going to do. And we're going to start off with them by playing a little game of Did You Know? Because you guys are going to learn about Black history somehow, somewhere. We're going to make sure you did it. So, Rachel, I think there's a lot of people out there who would be surprised to know that the richest man in history was a Black man. So I guess the question is, did you know that the richest man in history was a Black man?
That's right. And yes, and it's honestly a history that I think has gone forgotten or strategically hidden in certain contexts. But the man in question is Mansa Musa. And he was the king of the Mali Empire in the 14th century, and he is reported to have been the wealthiest man in history to have lived. And so it's a huge piece of history about who we are and where we come from, and also, I think, telling that story prior to the history that we often start with when you're talking about the transatlantic slave trade. But if you go further into history, you'll see that we've always been the architects and really at the center of economic innovation, stimulation for the economy. And so his story and his legacy is huge.
I saw that he was worth more than the top 5 billionaires on the Forbes list combined.
That's right. That's right. It's in reports will say it's inconceivable to even think about the amount of wealth that this man had.
Can we reincarnate him?
I know, right?
We can
We
totally
want to know his
reincarnate.
secret, right?
Right?
We want to know his lessons, right?
Right.
But history like that is important, right? Because it is something that's not widely celebrated at all.
That's
Yeah,
right.
one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation today is we so often forget what we came from. Like, we forget that Rachel and I talk about this, that before they sent people to America to be slaves, they tortured them in dungeons to make sure they could make the trip. Then they tortured them on the slave ships to make sure they would be strong enough to be slaves. And then once you got here, you were slaves, and if you survived that or not. So every Black person in America right now, that's your descendant. That's what you're made of, and that's who you are. And we really need to think of ourselves that way, especially bringing to our financial game.
Yeah.
Last did you know question, because she's got lots to talk to you guys about. Marc, did you know that Blacks have gone from being locked out of the financial markets to now young Blacks are the fastest growing group of investors into the stock market? Did you know that Black America is moving close to $2 trillion a year in buying power? And Black entrepreneurs are generating hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. From your perspective, what does it say about us that we've done these things in spite of the systemic racism?
We have silent economic power. We have economic power beyond description. I like to talk about the $6 trillion imperative, and that is the spending power of Blacks and Latinos put together, which is greater than the GDP of Russia. And so we have economic power that may be unrecognized, that may be silent, that is indeed growing. Yet, that pathway, we have a long way to go before we achieve economic parity. And we close this stunning and significant wealth gap in this country. But what excites me is the number of young African-American entrepreneurs, people who've decided that being economically independent, to being self-employed, is better than climbing the ladder in a corporation, climbing the ladder in an institution. And I think it's an exciting development. We've got to nurture it, we've got to advocate for them, and we've got to root for their success.
Man, I have so many things to talk about today. But before we get into it, I also want to acknowledge and say rest in power to Jesse Jackson, who at 84 years old has passed away. And so we want to take a moment to acknowledge that. And I know you have personal
Yeah, he was my
anecdotes.
father's college roommate. at North Carolina A&T. I know I got to say some Aggie pride. I'm an Aggie baby. It was my father,
great North Carolina
Jesse
A&T.
Jackson, and Congressman Ed Towns from Brooklyn, who I think is still the fifth longest serving congressman. I don't know what was in the water because I know how much trouble they got into in college as well. But I know, Mark, you knew him very well.
Yeah,
too.
Jesse Jackson was very special. I was a Jackson delegate to the 1984 and 1988 Democratic National Conventions, and he was an inspiration to my political career. What he did is he bridged civil rights into mainstream politics. And when Jesse ran in '84, he simultaneously challenged the Democratic establishment and Democratic orthodoxy, while at the same time offering a critique of Reaganomics in the 1980s. And so his candidacy also, in my view and my opinion, paved the way for, one, a Clinton presidency, and number two, an Obama presidency. The Clinton presidency, and also I think the election of Doug Wilder and David Dinkins and a number of others, because he registered people to vote. He expanded the electorate in his campaigns. And that meant that many others were the beneficiary of that incredible work. So may he rest in peace and rest in power. He's a giant. He's an oak tree. And he ailed in his final days and final weeks. And I know he's in a good place, a peaceful place, and a revered place today.
Job well done for him.
Yes.
Definitely.
And, did you want to also?
No, I was just going to add in terms of the legacy of service. I think for young people to have that model of how you resist in a sustained way, build momentum and movement around it. And so I think it's just a really powerful legacy to hold on to.
And, and I just want to add this because this is all just new things happening every day. And I want to talk about voting since we just talked about elections and registering to vote and what's happening now. And so I think there's a lot of misinformation that is online when it comes to voter suppression and people perhaps not being able to vote as readily. Some people are saying, oh, well, this was necessary so that, but I just want to make sure that we talk about the root of this whole SAVE Act and what that actually is.
So I'll tell you this. There's been a concerted effort since 2008 to make it more difficult for people to vote. It's well funded. It is well organized. And it began in 2008 after the election. Well, it accelerated in 2008 after the election of Barack Obama. And it involved an assault through the courts on the Voting Rights Act. And it was, to some extent, been successful because the Supreme Court eliminated an important provision of the Voting Rights Act, which required Southern states to get pre-clearance or pre-approval when they made changes to their voting laws. It has manifested itself today in what is really a suppression bill on steroids, the SAVE Act. The idea that you need to show up at the polling place with your birth certificate.
I don't know where my birth certificate is.
And that's the whole idea.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't have passports.
And there are many people who do not have passports. And so, and that your birth certificate needed to match the name on the voter roll. So think of a married woman. Her the name on the voter rolls may not match her birth name. This is a failed plan that has simply to make it more difficult for people to vote. It's targeted at black people. It's targeted at young people. And the beat goes on. It seeks to eliminate voting by mail. In many, many states, only Colorado, many other states only have voting by mail. So unfortunately, to me, the challenge is democracy works best when more people participate.
Yes.
Because the theory of democracy is the consent of the governed. And this effort to suppress, shrink the electorate, unfortunately, is part of the politics of today. And we have to resist it with every single thing that we have.
Wow, and Rachel, that's all of that is, part of the capitalist system. It seems a little bit. And I was looking at some numbers. Right now, the non-whites in the United States are at about 52% just about 50%
of the births
of the total population. And basically, we're going to be minority majority soon. And when you look at all of the stuff happening in politics and with those types of legislations, how much of that is a response to, oh my gosh, they're about to take over?
I like to think that for some, that may be the motivation.
Right.
But one of the things I want to really remind people is in celebrating Reverend Jesse Jackson, is that in 1984 and 88, if you listen to what he actually said, he talked about an America where black and white and Latino and Asian and men and women and gay and straight all participated equally in governing the nation. He talked about this multiracial vision. And I think we're in tension today between, I think, those of us that embrace that kind of future. A future that's diverse, it's a mosaic, it's a rainbow, it's a gumbo. And some who imagine America of 1950. Imagine an America that is different. Imagine America of a caste system, a racialized type of a caste system. And so we've got to understand what is at stake. What's at stake in this? And it manifests itself in economic policy. You know, whether we're going to have economic policies that benefit broad numbers of people. We just saw a fiscal plan for the United States. The president called it his big, beautiful bill. I say it's a big, ugly bill. But it's a fiscal plan that shifted $400 billion in economic benefits from healthcare and education and children and families to create relief for the 1,000 billionaires. 1,000 billionaires in the country. It's the most massive. So it's a wealth transfer. But it's not a wealth transfer down. It's a wealth transfer up. And so why should we talk about this? Public policy matters. That bill was a bill passed by the Congress, promoted by the president, and what it says is your pocketbook, economic policy, is impacted by politics. Period. Full stop. You better believe it. You better get it. If you think it doesn't matter, you have scales and barnacles on your eyes. You're not paying attention to the fact that it's not the whole game, but bank rules and bank regulations and those rules which impact how financing works is impacted by government, by public policy, by Congress, by the executive branch. We've got to understand the connectivity between the two and think that the two don't matter. Why would the wealthiest Americans be so active in politics by giving campaign contributions? Because they want to impact the rule book. And they want to turn the rule book into something that benefits them. And we are saying, I think, today that we need economic policies that level the playing field and that benefit a broad number of people. We have fewer middle-class Americans today than we had in 1971.
And I
It's
think
a stunning number.
when people hear that, we had your friend Shalonda on recently, and a way for people to understand how this works. So there used to be, after the housing crisis, some regulation came out called Dodd-Frank, which really tried to regulate the banking industry and stuff. And in President Trump's first term, he got rid of all that. So I don't know if you guys remember the internet boom when companies got really rich because they'd build an internet company and they'd take it public on the stock market, overnight billionaires. Getting rid of the legislation, as President Trump did, you don't hear those stories so much anymore. But so who's controlling the world? Private equity. So he made all of those laws go away. So now companies can stay private and you can't see what they're doing. There's no transparency. And because we're now in a private system, that's why you can do away with things like DEI so easily. So there's that's the direct connection between what you voted for, and you voted for someone who took away those guardrails, let companies behave privately, and because of that we have the legislation that we have now. Rachel, one thing we're celebrating today about
back to that.
back to celebrating. So it's been like, I think within 5 years we've gone from about, and it's crazy, like 260,000 black millionaires in the United States to 1.2 million. And fastest growing group of millionaires in the United States, and it's largely because of entrepreneurship. And I know what you are, your book, your great work, you kind of reimagine what black capitalism is, and talk to us about that.
Yeah, and I think even for so many, the concept of black capitalism or black capitalists can seem oxymoronic. You know, this notion of how can you have a productive relationship to an economic system predicated on violence, extraction, exploitation, while still be an active participant in it, aiming to have any kind of productive value with that. And so what I offer in the book is really a reframe. And that reframe is an invitation for us to think about how we can reposition ourselves within the economic system in order to produce positive gain, but then also, and most importantly in this framework, to engender social good. Because when we talk about being a black entrepreneur, the set of questions, if you're really invested in communal engagement and communal social good and driving that, it's not about just reproducing the harms of capitalism. It's not just about profit in excess to no end degree, but really about how can we create black thriving in a sustainable way for communities at large. And so I think black entrepreneurship is part of that story as we rethink our relationship to capitalism more broadly. And it's difficult. And I know there are challenges to it, but I think this mindset is what can really help us meet the moment that we're in the long term as well.
You know, you asked this question, how can one thrive in capitalism with an ethical mindset? Because that's also, I think, a really important one. And I think about the Epstein files when and everything that's been happening with that, because a lot of times people do equate money to evil.
That's right.
So how do you answer that question? How can you thrive in capitalism?
Yeah, because you're right. People will say, like, money is the root of all evil. But again, I think the reframe is that money or kind of monetary capital is really a tool that can be used in service of thriving. And I think what's really important is that kind of foundational understanding of, again, if you are to participate in capitalism, you have to understand what are the potential outcomes. And then also the critique that we have of capitalism should be the standard by which we engage in it differently. And the set of questions around how can I, even as an entrepreneur, create a culture within my workspace that is fair, that is just for my team, you know, and create cultures of equity. And that requires an awareness and intentionality to use monetary capital as a tool in service of that.
You know,
I was going to say, that the legendary Ferdinand Eichenroder, otherwise known as Reverend Ike, famously said that he said in response to money being the root of all evil, he said it is the lack of money which is the root of all evil. You know, he turned the statement on its own. One of the things I think that's fascinating is that prior to, quote, integration in the civil rights movement, you had a contained black economy. So, for example, in my own family, on my mother's side, all of her family members were entrepreneurs. My grandfather built the largest black insurance company in Louisiana, one of the largest in the South, from the 20s until the early 1970s. His brothers and cousins built funeral homes, florists. One of them owned a gas station. Now, what worked in those days is that it was an economy where a black person couldn't go to downtown New Orleans and try on clothes. A black person could not go to a white insurance company and buy insurance. Couldn't go to a white doctor. Couldn't go to a white lawyer. And therefore there was a contained economy. But we built in those days a merchant and professional class of business owners, primarily in the South, but not exclusively in the South. And then after integration, corporate America and big business America understood the power of the green in the hands of the black community and began to market, began to sell, began to, if you will, remember the day when Johnson Products, George Johnson, the great entrepreneur from Chicago who is still living, built a company that was publicly traded on the American Stock Exchange, and he sold black hair care products because none of the mainstream companies sold it. After integration, they all figured out, I've got to create a black division. We have economic opportunity and economic power. That's why I'm so excited about all these young entrepreneurs. Right? Their ability to build, there is a market out there. There's a constituency and a consumer base that wants to be served, and there's a constituency and a consumer base that wants to be intelligent about where they spend their money.
Exactly.
They're going to look
We've
for
seen
the
the
community-based
impact.
business. They're going to look for the black-owned business. They're going to look for the business that's responsible in the community, and we've got to make that a new movement.
Yeah.
Wow, Rachel, so now for entrepreneurs, I mean, that's one of the great things about hip-hop is hip-hop made wealth cool. And you had like all the original hip hop stars like Jay-Z coming out and taking on Wall Street and succeeding at that. And then they made entrepreneurship cool. And I know your vision of black capitalism is different. And I'm just seeing it in, especially younger generations that it's like they're not fighting the system so much as they've just kind of opted out of it and creating their own.
Right. And I think so much of the opportunity is to ground, or let me put it this way, when we talk about support black businesses, the other side of that coin is engage in capitalism. And so when we're thinking about that natural resistance that we might have, it's like, okay, actually, if we understand and approach this with a strategy, with an intention and an understanding that we are doing it differently in service of different outcomes, that can change that inherent resistance that we might have to it. And it's really about how can we approach this, even from a movement perspective, to really have a different set of outcomes, really ushering towards black thriving that I talk about. And so that's really the hope and the kind of mental mindset shift around how we can relate to black capitalism.
You brought up Jay-Z, and you talk about Jay-Z in the book as well, and O.J. Simpson and that. But I want to ask you about Jay-Z and the NFL partnership. We're coming off the Super Bowl, and a lot of people can be critical of Jay-Z's partnership with the NFL. And you even quote a USA Today article saying that it's a reminder that capitalism always wins. That was an article that you talk about in this book. So I want to get from you, for people listening, when it comes to that partnership, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's the case that nothing is ever black and white. There's always contradictions. America is a contradiction. And so our relationship to capitalism is no different. Right. And so we can look at a scenario, look at a partnership and critique it and say, oh, this person's a sellout or whatever it is because of their engagement in the economic system. But I would look at that and say, well, what is the either subversive or very clear intervention that's being made by that person participating in capitalism the way that they are? What new set of outcomes or opportunities or access are they opening for others that might not have existed before? What's the kind of long-term strategy? Like, those are the questions that I think are more useful and more productive for us than saying and looking at something and kind of writing it off as critical, but actually recognizing capitalism is the economic system of today. It's not being dismantled tomorrow.
Some of this criticism, like the criticism of Jay-Z, is what I call twisted logic. Okay, you say, Jay-Z, you should be in a partnership with the NFL. What do you want, a mainstream white artist to have that opportunity? Sometimes the criticism, to me, is so out of bounds, it doesn't even merit a response, right? The fact that he has the opportunity to assist in orchestrating the halftime show and therefore including, think about it, a Latino artist this year. Last year it was Kendrick Lamar. I remember in Los Angeles it was a complete hip-hop. He's able to empower others through this relationship, we need to understand and stop this petty criticism sometimes of people who are trying to create economic opportunity. I always say it's easy to sit in the gallery. It's easy to sit on the sidelines. It's easy to criticize. It's difficult to build. It's difficult to create. And I think in this instance, the fact that this relationship exists has created a chance to empower many, many others. And that's the lens through which I see it. And people have a right, indeed, to their opinion, but sometimes I believe we engage in petty jealousy with respect to sometimes some of the prominent, more successful people, in our community.
Wow. And I know, Rachel, one of the things you have people examine in your book, Black Capitalist, everybody get it. It's on Amazon. Everybody make sure you get it. Is kind of using your job more as your bank than getting like so emotionally attached to it. And you give an example of someone working on Wall Street where that's also you're from. Doing that.
Exactly. Because
I want to give people things they can use in real time to try to grasp all this.
Because I think, some folks might approach their work as a place where they derive some of their identity. Whereas for me, again, when I talk about that strategy and intention, I work in finance, I work on Wall Street, and I have a very different relationship to that space. It's really about how can I leverage this space, acknowledging that it is a place robust with resources, human capital, social capital. How can I use the seat that I'm in service of my community who is not in this space with me? And so that's what I talk about when I'm saying, let's engage with capitalism. Because, some of the critique might be, oh, you're in the belly of the beast of capitalism on Wall Street. I would say, well, actually, let's think about the opportunities and access that this can create for us large scale when you have that strategy and intention. That's, backing your decision to be in that space. And so that's really part of that kind of mental mindset, the reframes that I think are so important because, again, capitalism is the name of the game. So how do we show up in it in a way
we have always understood in this journey that there are those that have to work from the inside. There are those that have to work within the suites of America to bring about change. And then there are those who work on the outside. And my view is it's the symphony of justice, which means there is a string section,
Right.
and there's a percussion section, and maybe there's a vocalist every once in a while, and we've got to understand that. So I just kind of cringe at some of these hollow criticisms that because you're inside of a major financial institution that you're ipso facto, have in fact sold out. And we've got to disavow once again of what I call petty superficial criticisms, because the movement of civil rights, whether it was Martin or whether it was Malcolm, was about being included, having a seat at the table in the American economy, having a seat at the table in the American political system, and to sit at those tables with some semblance of equality. And that journey continues. And that's why I encourage those that are on the inside just to remember, be savvy, but don't be fearful. And recognize the special opportunity, because there was once a day when folks like you were not inside.
Right.
And that wasn't too long ago.
Right.
I want to ask you, you've worked on both the inside and from the outside when it comes to politics. How do you think, or where do you think you were able to affect most change?
Both.
Okay.
Now, I love being mayor of New Orleans.
Who wouldn't?
And
Wait, I just have
loved
visions
it
of Marty.
because I had an opportunity to lead and shape public policy. I had an opportunity to create the framework, a broad housing inclusion program, and initiatives to make sure that African American businesses, I opened the doors for African American investment bankers, lawyers, real estate developers to participate. And that was being on the inside, right? And being able to, but what was crucial in those days was the continued agitation of those on the outside,
Right.
who created a climate that made what I was doing favorable and supported. See, it's not single dimensional.
Yeah.
And this is what is so critical and so important for us to understand, that the power dynamic is both inside and indeed outside, and you can have impact. And in the journey of my career, I've been on the outside, been on the inside, been on the outside. In the work I do now, I have to have both inside connections in corporate America. I have to work on the outside as well. And that is how power absolutely works. And it is not, I tell young people all the time, participating in a protest, in an assembly, and using your First Amendment right is not inconsistent with voting.
Right.
It's just another lever of power. Protesting is not a strategy. It's a tactic, right? Voting is not a strategy. It's a tactic to achieve an outcome. And so we need the folks who operate in boardrooms, in C-suites. We need the folks that are operating in the community and on the street. We need people who are operating in city halls and inside transit authorities and housing authorities. We need the community of entrepreneurs. But when you're on the inside, I felt very strongly when I ran New Orleans. I feel strongly at the National Urban League. I've got to create access and opportunity for entrepreneurs and business people. And I needed to say, okay, we're going to invest our cash, we're going to invest our retirement money. We're going to do more with African American, women-owned, Latino-owned investment bankers. We're going to make sure that African American and Latino real estate developers, builders, have an opportunity to participate on a fair and equal basis. And so you can impact from the outside and indeed from the inside. And I think that what I've learned is when I was on the inside, I work with the outside. When I was on the outside, I work with the inside.
Right.
It's not
Against.
it's not that simplistic, right?
True.
I want to, Dan, can you pull up this quote from Stephen A. Smith that we were arguing about behind the scenes? Because, he just did an interview on CBS Sunday mornings where he was talking about possibly running for president and some things that he had to say about, basically, it was about racism. And he's saying that racism isn't as bad as the left makes it seem like. And, right, is that, oh, you have it? Okay, let's hear it.
Do you worry about racism if you ran for president?
No. I know it exists. I know that you can't escape it, but I do not believe it is as prevalent as some on the left would like us to believe. Now more so than ever before. It's not about race. It's about the fact that they don't give a damn about it because they got their own problems.
I cringe at Stephen A. Smith's commentary. And the reason why is you are trained as a sports commentator. And I liked you as a provocative sports commentator. You have zero track record in public policy, zero track record in civil rights, zero track record. You have a right to your opinion, but to me, it's not credible. Maybe you with your multi-million-dollar salary don't experience the day-to-day experiences of racism and exclusion. And, I liked him as a sports commentator. I don't think that that's transferable to public office. I don't think it's a skill set because you have a big mouth and maybe you can articulate things. But all he's doing is sanctioning the mindset of others. His comments and the things he said over the last 6 months are deeply troubling. And the fact that he's got this platform that he's now using for this commentary. If he wants to run, let him get out here and hustle like everyone else. I don't know how far he's going to get, but it would be like me deciding tomorrow I'm going to do play-by-play and I'm going to go do commentary. Do I have opinions about sports? Do I know a little bit about sports? But I'm not an expert. That's not what I'm trained to be able to do. So my thing, he's got a right to his opinion. He needs to stay in his damn lane.
And listen, and I
Well
wanted
said.
to, yeah.
Well said. I got nothing else. Well said.
But I think also for you working on Wall Street in finance and that, I'm sure you see it a different way also.
I mean, it's just, it's factless when I hear that, in terms of the argument that he's making. It's like, what is the justification, the validation for any of that? When you actually look at the lived experiences that people are having, like you said, it might be the case that his access has allowed him to have a lived experience that is
And he's also very
devoid-
well known.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just an exceptional case that, he's making these blanket statements that are just unfounded. So
Look, I had an experience about 5 years ago. And that experience was an experience where I was at a meeting in Silicon Valley, and I was in the lobby of a fancy hotel. I had on a suit and a tie and sunshades and a backpack, and I was standing in the lobby waiting for my ride, which was private car service that was going to pick me up and take me to the airport. And a woman walks up to me and says, "I'm ready to go." And I said, "Well, where are we going?" She says, "Well, aren't you my driver?" I said to her, "No, ma'am. I'm in the process of buying this hotel." Right? In other words, it was, I'm thinking, what about me, right, conveys that I'm a driver and I am well-dressed.
Yeah, I know you had on a nice suit.
I have a backpack and I'm waiting. So the point that racial stereotyping, racial profiling, that you can isolate yourself from it simply because of your economic standing or your public standing, it was, and I tell the story because I think it's important for people to understand that personal bigotry and stereotyping can happen on any level. For people to say, "I don't think racism is," it's not even credible because it's racism is a system. And in America today, disparities in economics and healthcare, in access to capital, are widely documented and widely known. And people need to understand there's a difference between racism, the system, and personal bigotry. You may not experience personal bigotry, but that doesn't mean that this
it can't
racism,
be denied.
you can't imagine it out because people don't run around and call you a name, or because you've never maybe been, quote, in your own mind, denied a job or an opportunity in your mind because of race. And so I think people need to get a mature point of view about the difference between the two and about what the two, in fact, are, right? And we, to the extent that we understand it on that level, we shouldn't hide it. We shouldn't get into debate about whether it exists or not. We should have a conversation about how to make America better.
Yeah. Productively moving forward instead of saying, "Oh, this is a very left."
Well, this is Happy Black History Month.
Sorry, guys.
On their last,
No, we're having a great.
I won't bring up ice.
This is celebrate. No. This is Did You Know Day.
I'm gonna tell it like I see it. I'm gonna call it like it is.
I appreciate it.
And I think that's
I
that's
appreciate
important. Yeah.
these types of conversations too, because I do feel like there's a lot of people that have opinions on things and have platforms, but they may not necessarily have
Facts.
the facts, the history, the background.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's why we're talking about this history right
And
now.
I just want to congratulate this sister on this book. I just started kind of paging through it while I was out there, and
It's
I
mind-blowing.
may have to buy a few copies and distribute it
Thank you.
to people in my network. But congratulations!
Thank you so much.
And I'll send you my book too.
Yeah, your book is
Yeah.
great too.
Yeah.
So one takeaway, we are in our journey, Black Americans, African Americans, like everybody else. But when you look at what we've come from and where we are, one takeaway from our audience to help them move forward.
I think our takeaway is that we're a community with abundant talent, abundant assets, an incredible history, and we have incredible talent and ability. And even though these are challenging and difficult times when we question whether our progress is being thwarted or stalled, I think we've got to continue to have hope. I think we've got to continue to have a sense of optimism even though it may seem like we are, because we are in a storm. And Black History Month to me is a time to celebrate successes. It's time to celebrate accomplishments. It's time to celebrate people. But it's also a time for us to reaffirm, our commitment. And that commitment is for a nation that works well for everyone. And that's what we want. It's a simple proposition. And I think we have to continue to work for it. So, happy Black History Month. And I want to congratulate you guys on the show and on concentrating and focusing on this conversation about wealth.
Thank you. We
great.
appreciate
It's been almost
that.
a decade.
I know, right?
It's been a decade for the show?
Well,
We were 10.
for Wealth Wednesday.
Yeah.
For Wealth Wednesday.
For Wealth Wednesday.
10 years. Where have I been?
Yeah, no, this has been 3.
Yeah,
three,
it's been
okay.
a
Wealth
decade
Wednesday.
for Wealth Wednesdays. And yeah, we were 5 and we started saying, let's play Wealth Wednesdays.
And
Started
we
very
want to
young.
also shout out the Civil Rights Museum also in Harlem.
Yeah, so we'll open. So we've moved to Harlem, and it's an economic development project, a $300 million project, our new headquarters and retail. Next year, rather later this year in November, we will open the Urban Civil Rights Museum, first ever civil rights museum in New York City history. And you all got to come up and check us out. In fact, if you want to come up and do the show,
That would be
from
amazing.
our
That'd be
building
great.
one time, and
That way we would
we'll
love
get
that.
an audience for you all if you want it. I think it would be great to see this economic development project. And so we think the project, I call it a greenlining project, because we went to Harlem where many people have redlined and said, let's greenline. So come see what
Yay,
we've done.
greenline.
Come see
Somebody
what we've
else
built.
I know who's in Harlem now, too.
Oh, yeah, my coffee shop. Shout out to Cup inside the Africa Center. You're from royalty in Ghana. You found out.
Crazy.
We have to celebrate that, too.
I know.
Party in Harlem.
Yeah. Because
Definite party in Harlem.
you talk about just that talent and abundance, and I think the bedrock of all of that is our resilience. And also just the remembrance of who we are. As I even have my own journey of learning about my family history, where I come from, a family of entrepreneurs that I come from, and what it means for me to have that Ghanaian identity and also be, an American here. And we carry all of that, as we usher into the future around building that nation, right, for all of us. That's more fair and more just. And so it's huge.
For more Rachel, follow at Dr. Laryea on Instagram, and that's at DRLARYEA. For Marc, follow at National Urban League.
At
on
Nat Urban League and at Marc Morial. At Nat
Urban League. And at Marc, that's Marc with the C. Morial, Morial. And you know where to find Angela, you know where to find Cup, and you know where to find us every Wednesday.
Thank you.
What a great Black History Month.
Yes, thank you
you
guys.
both so much for coming. And
I
happy Wealth
appreciate it.
Wednesdays.
Love having these conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.